everybody, it's Anna here. Sorry about that. I've been on at Ella all morning to do the laundry, and of course she's waited till right now to do the laundry, so I felt like there was something going on in the laundry room. I had to go check it out, making sure it's nice and quiet. Can you guys hear me? Hey Joanne, Joanne is here. Thanks for coming. I feel like it's been ages since I've been in this space, but I guess it's not been so long. And fingers crossed, third time's a charm, we don't have any problems today. So touch wood, everyone touch wood for me. We are going to be looking at the Scenic Template Album, and I'm assuming you can hear me because nobody said otherwise. So Susan is here. So awesome, yeah, please communicate with me in the chat box. It makes me feel like I'm not sat in my office talking to myself. So it's super helpful. If you have any questions, then just let me know as we go through this. My plan is to show you the Scenic Template Album and then maybe provide some inspiration with a couple of ways that you can use it. So this is the latest album to arrive in the Anna Aspinus design store. And of course, if I just click over to the store at Scraps, you can actually see it on the home page here. It's on sale right now. For the time being, it's not going to be, I'm not sure when it's going to go off sale, probably give it another week or so, but you can grab it there. And when you go ahead and purchase the collection, then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you get 6 different zip files which will open into these folders, and then each zip file contains the templates. So we have pages 1 through 3 in the first album, and then from there they are delivered in pairs. So it's basically designed that the first page is going to be your front page if you're printing this as an album, and then all of the other pages, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they all pair up to create cohesive spreads. So you can use them individually as single pages, or you can place them together to create these double page options. I'm going to show you how to do that. I thought I might just pick one that I might want to work with in double page format. So maybe I'll go with this one. So in order to put them into a double page format, I'm going to take page 12 and 13 and head into my Photoshop workspace and go to File, New. And then to create a double page spread, you're basically going to double the width of the size of the page that you typically like to create. So I like to create a 12 by 12 format, which means my width of my canvas is going to be 2 times that, which is 24. If you're working in 8 by 8, it's going to be 16. So I'm going to enter a value of 24 inches with a height of 12 and a resolution of 300 dpi. The 300 dpi is really important because it basically means that you are going to be able to print your pages and have them look good when you send those for print. So I'm just opening up this, I have this 24 by 12 inch canvas, and I like to, with the move tool selected, I like to click into the rulers. And if you can't access or you don't see the rulers, go to view and ensure that you have this rulers option checked. This allows me then to click into those rulers, drag, and then I like to release that line in the center of my canvas. So in essence, what I'm doing is I am differentiating with one side of the canvas with the other. It looks like somebody doesn't have any video yet. What you can try and do is you can try and refresh your browser. I'm recording this, so yeah, try and refresh. It could have something to do with your internet. I don't know how, if there's a storm going on or if the speed is low, if you don't have good streaming. Another person had said to me too, when it doesn't work on the desktop, then they have a lot more luck when they use the app. So I believe that there's an app that you can maybe use on one of your mobile devices that you could use. So hopefully I'm not kind of speaking out of turn there, but a couple of ideas for you. So I have my double page spread, and then so with the 2 different sides of the spread differentiated, I can now go back into my template album. I'm going to hold down the Control or the Command key and then click on the 2 different PSD files that I want to bring into my workspace, and then I'm going to drag them into the background. I don't want to drag them directly onto our canvas because that's just going to flatten the layers, and we want to make sure we have all of the layers. So we've got 12 and 13, and these are designed to go together. So again, you could use these templates individually, or you can use them as a double page spread. I'm now going to, in the layers panel, click on the text box or the last layer in the layers panel, and then with the shift key held down, I'm going to click on the first layer so that all of those layers are highlighted. And then with the move tool selected, I'm going to ensure that I have that auto select option unchecked, because this is going to allow me then to easily drag these layers into position, and I want to make sure that the edges are flush against the edges of my canvas. And I'm actually just going to minimize this, and then I'm going to move on to the second one, and I'm going to repeat that process of selecting all those layers and then dragging them onto my canvas. So now you can see that I have a double page spread to which I can add all of my images. So what I love about these two kind of masks that run across both sides of the page, it means that I can then extend a photo across the page. So that's a really great way if you are doing, especially if you're printing a photo book and you're doing a lay flat option, the photo can extend to one side or another. And if you're going to do that, then I do highly recommend that you pull these sort of photo blends layers down together, just so that they're in the same spot. You can also go ahead and delete the background layers once that they've been added into the mix. And then you're going to go and find a photo. So I have a whole bunch of photos, having just come back from a little getaway, and there might be something in here that I could use. So I'm kind of looking for a scenic shot. I don't want to spend too much time. I do have a panorama, but I'm not sure if it's going to be big enough to go on here. And I haven't spent too much time with these since I downloaded them. So it's going to be, like I said, a little bit of experimentation. Just seeing if I can find that panoramic photo, and I can't. So hopefully you're taking your photos in high resolution. This one's kind of pretty here. This one's cool. So let's go ahead with this one. So I'm going to drag this into my workspace, and I'm going to drag this one directly onto my canvas, and it should go directly on top. It's not quite long enough to fit over both sides, but just for the sake of argument, if you have a file that you've taken or a photo that you've taken on your camera or on your phone that has a higher resolution, ideally you want a photo that is spread across both sides of your canvas. That's going to be the ideal way to go. In this case, I've had to increase the size of this photo because it was taken on my iPhone and it's not quite large enough. So I probably wouldn't want to send this to print, but for the purpose of demonstration, it works pretty well. And because I had the photo blends layer selected when I introduced the photo, then that photo is deposited directly on top of that photo blend. So I'm going to select that photo layer and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer, drag it down, and then go Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And so it's as simple as that to be able to add your images to these masks. And then of course you can see we've got all of these great textures around the side here, and this gives me the opportunity then to select these different layers, and this is where the auto select option comes in. If you hold down your control key, you can see that I can toggle that auto select option on and off. If you're working on a Mac, of course that would be your command key. So I'm going to use this option in order to be able to click on an area of my layout and select that layer. So notice when I have that auto select option checked and I click on this paper texture, then it will automatically select that layer in the layers panel. This prevents me from having to scroll through my layers panel to find the appropriate layer that I want to work with. And then I'm going to recolor these layers. So I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. At the moment they're all black. I'm going to go to Color, and then with that Preserve Transparency box checked, I might want to sample an area of my layout. So I'm looking for something a bit lighter. Let's go with this gray and then click OK. So notice how that just softens the look a little bit. I can also go and I can change the blending mode. So that's quite effective here, the color burn or even the linear burn. And I like the color burn, but it's not quite dark enough. So I can go to Image Adjustment Levels in Photoshop Elements, that's Enhance Adjust Lighting Levels, and I can increase the levels to make that stand out a little bit more. And then I can go ahead and just repeat this process with the other layers. So we have this texture layer here, so maybe I want to fill that with the same gray color, and then maybe play around with, again, the blending mode. So maybe this time I want to go with, there's not much happening down there. Typically I'm going to go with color burn or linear burn. I think in this case I'm going to go with color burn, and I'm going to go back up to that levels, like the variance in the color, like how it brings these yellows through. And then this one here is this one's a splatter layer. This one is the texture layer. So I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. Maybe this one I want to go with more of a yellow. Click OK, and then again play around with the different options that we have available. Now, if you don't like the color, instead of going to the levels, you can go to Image Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. That's Enhance Adjust Color, Hue and Saturation in Photoshop Elements. And then you can maybe adjust the saturation of that. You can play around with perhaps changing the hue. You can also make it darker and lighter using the lightness control. So you're pretty much going to go around and do this with all of the different layers that you have available to you. I'm not going to go through and do them all. And then of course you can go in and you can add in the different photos here. So if I wanted to, I could duplicate this photo and I could drag it up and I could have it framed. Or it might be that I want to go back to my photos here and maybe have a picture of the girls and have them in that square. So I'm going to drag that in, and because I have this layer selected, it's going to go directly on top there. And then I'm going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And then I can do the same at the top here if I wanted to add in another photo here. Maybe add this one in of Ella, and add this one in the top here. Create clipping mask. So layer, create clipping mask. And if I want to resize it, I just have to click on the corner points of the photo and drag inwards. And then I can go in and I can add in the, change the text by using the type tool, clicking on the text and adding in my text there. I can also add in word art, and we can also add in digital art supplies. So I'm actually just going to lighten this image. Of course, it would have probably been better if I had lightened it before I added it to the clipping mask, but that's okay. I'm just going to go in and do it real quickly. I'm doing that using the curves, but you could also use the levels if you're working in Photoshop Elements and don't have access to the curves. So I personally like to just kind of use these templates with a white background, but you might also decide that you want to add in digital art supplies. So I'm going to select the background layer, and I'm going to try and use what I've got available to me. Let's go back to our layer templates and see what we have in Alfresco. This is the latest ArtPlay palette collection, of course. And so maybe we go and we pick up a color here. So this might be a good option, this brown color. So it's at the beach. So you can add a solid background into the mix if you wanted to. And you can duplicate that layer and add that on the other side so it's the same. So that actually quite works well. You can also change the color of those papers if you want to by using that same hue and saturation. So you can play around with different hues to see what works best. There's sort of a greenish hue, more of a blue. That kind of pink was nice too. I'm going to go with this sort of slightly greenish hue. And then of course if you change the color of the background, then I highly recommend that you delete the other background, duplicate that layer, and then just drag it across so that you have exactly the same color on both sides. The same with the photo. Before you clip the photo, edit the photo, and then it's exactly the same on both sides. And then you can also add in other things around, as well as these layers here. So let's go ahead and just change this real fast. Go with more of a brown. We'll freestyle it this time and maybe do this one. And you can change the blending mode of these different layers. The lace might be fun if we go to image, image adjustments and invert. Then we can make that white if we wanted to, and that sort of matches this down here. I can also go to layer, layer style, and add layer styles as well. So you can add drop shadows to different layers. You can add dimension in that way. So once you have all of the edges, then the other thing that you can do to kind of jazz up these templates is you could also add transfers and overlays around the edge of the image. So you want to make sure that your background actually covers the background. Sometimes I just like to pull the edges out just a few pixels just to make sure that that background fully covers the extent of the page. And so you have two different choices when you're adding transfers. You can use the transfers and overlays that come with the ArtPlay palette, and please don't be alarmed by these black backgrounds. This of course is a Windows 10 dysfunction. If I go ahead and I click on these layers, you can see that this is what these images look like. So they're transparent images, and so the black background is just showing the transparent area of that design. So I'm going to go ahead and pull maybe some of these in and see if we can get them to work without having to kind of dot around. It's not the ideal color, but maybe we kind of rotate this around a little bit and we can perhaps place some of these behind here like this. And then once we have them in place, then we can go to our hue and saturation and then maybe manipulate the color a little bit. Bring down that saturation, maybe make it a little lighter. So there's lots of different ways that we can adjust these transfers to make them work for our photos. And then let's go see what else we've got. We've got this one here. Maybe we add this one in. We could add this in the top here if we wanted to. It's too dark, so we go back to our hue and saturation. Maybe increase that lightness. Maybe change the hue a little bit, bring down the saturation, and now it's starting to sort of fit. We've got a bit of a hard edge here, so you can either add a layer mask, because it's a real just very kind of a very small area that I want to manipulate. I'm just going to use the eraser tool with a blending brush and just kind of get rid of that hard edge like that. The other thing you could do here too is you can play around with blending modes. So I can add different blending modes to these to change the look of them. So multiply was quite good. And you can also change the opacity. So you can bring that opacity down. I would not increase the size of these too much. So definitely not more than sort of 25%. So you can increase the size of this if you wanted to, just a little bit, or move it around. I try not to increase the size though if possible. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it as it is and maybe just move it around a little bit. I like how the texture in the transfer aligns with this line up here. And then let's go see what else we've got here. So we've got this fun lace here, so we can maybe add that into the mix. So notice at the moment I'm placing all of these transfers behind the image. You can also perhaps bring these transfers on top of the image and place them that way. You can also isolate certain areas of the transfer. So these are two separate areas of the transfer. So by using this lasso tool, I can create a selection around part of that transfer and then add that onto a separate layer. So this way now I can manipulate these two parts of the transfer individually. So we'll keep this one there. Maybe go and add a drop shadow layer style. Maybe bring down that a little bit. And then this one here, you see we can now move around. We've got some lace at the top there, but maybe we'll add this around and maybe rotate it. So we have the option to manipulate that independently from the other one. You could also go up to your hue and saturation. You can make it lighter. You can make it more saturated. So again, using the same tools over and over to modify the transfers to suit your layout design. And then we'll add the same shadow there. So I quite like this because we've got sort of lace all the way around. I don't know if I like these two on the same plane. So maybe we'll play around with this and add it in a different area. Maybe add it like that. Again, same plane, but I do like how it bridges the two areas. The other option is if you like the placement of that piece of stitching, maybe we move this piece of stitching over and make it part of this area here. We could also just get rid of some of that yellow by bringing down the saturation a little bit. And now we've got a really nice visual triangle that leads us around the layout design. So you would just pretty much continue adding in different pieces of these transfers. Let's add this over the top here. So maybe this one can go, whoops. Got to be careful, again, that's why you've got to be careful of this auto select, because you can accidentally grab hold of the wrong element. So thinking of trying to find a place to put this that would be of interest. So I'm just kind of moving the pieces around, and sometimes they don't fit. So if you can't get it to fit, then you just go ahead and delete it. And then the other way to add transfers, of course, is to use the transfers and overlays. So these are very much like the transfers in that they are these cool sort of pieces that you can blend with your digital art. But instead of them being just PNG single layer format, then they are delivered in this PSD format. And so the beauty of that, of course, is that when I pull this into the background, then you can access the layers individually. So if I don't want to use all of this transfer, I can just use one piece. So if I bring this piece over, then we can maybe add this. We can go to Edit, Transform, and Flip Horizontal so that that harsh edge fits flush up against the side of our page design, and then maybe drag this below our image. So you could test different ways of doing that. I actually think I prefer it on top, and then of course we're going to want to go in and change the color of that and maybe make it a little more saturated, maybe increase the size. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm not a fan of that. You can also go ahead and remove these pieces around if you don't like them where they are. I'm going to go ahead and lighten this, I think, and just make it much lighter so that it doesn't stand out as much. And then I think I'll have more success with it. You can also rotate it to make it fit wherever you want it to go. So I think I'd like it over here. I'm going to add that there. And then that kind of leaves us with a space here to add things in. So you kind of get the feel of how this can work. Let's go back to our transfer in here. See if there's other pieces. So there's this silver paint piece. I'm going to drag that over. Maybe have this over here. And again, you can colorize that by going to hue and saturation and using this colorize box. So if I click on that colorize box, it's going to add color to that. And then we can use the hue slider to move that into a more appropriate color. So this one way I like to use these different pieces of the transfers is to use them independently, so that then you can sort of embellish your design as you like. Anyone have any questions so far about this process? So, and then you pretty much just keep adding pieces until you feel like it's done. Really, I mean, as soon as it gets to that point where you feel like you've gone too far and you need to start turning off pieces of the composition, so you can just keep adding and adding, and when it starts to look too busy, then that's the time to maybe start turning some layers off. So maybe we want to turn that off. Maybe we want to play around with the color. Let's go to Edit Fill. We'll try a lighter color here. Click OK, so that's a little bit better. And maybe we change the placement of that. So lots of different options. And then of course, to complete this, I would usually add a title. So let's go and take a look at what we have in the way of titles over here. See if we have something that might fit. Outdoors. So let the adventure begin, fresh air, easy breezy. Any of these would work really well. Let's play. So let's go just add one up here. So you can play around with different placements. This is a possibility here. We could add it down the bottom here and maybe change the color. Go to edit, fill, and maybe choose that light color. And so that's going to make it stand out. So I quite like that down there. Sort of creates this diagonal. And then over here, I'm feeling like this is a little bit naked in terms of the design. So it might be that I go and look for perhaps some birds to add into the sky. That might be quite fun. I think I have some birds somewhere. If I go to my actual brush sets and I go to pictorial, and then I think under maybe animal, I do have my take light. So I have 3 different bird brushes that you can add into the mix. So this is kind of fun with these geese moving over. So if I wanted to add those in, I could add these up here. And you might want to try multiple styles of bird. So this one's kind of fun too. It's got a bit more of a curvature to it. And that fits really quite nicely there. So I can add that in and then maybe go ahead and change the color, because right now it's in black. And then I can go and maybe select a gray. Gray is a bit more forgiving than black. And then maybe change the blending mode. So color burn, linear burn are my 2 favorite. I'm going to go with color burn and then just boost up the levels just so we can see that a little bit better. And then you can think about maybe adding in some embellishments if you like to use those. Of course, you could just finish where you are here and go, this is good. I'm just going to add my journaling and move on. But if you're an embellishment type person, then you can go to either the multimedia elements and you can pull elements from there. I'm wondering if there's something there that we could use potentially. So something like this branch might work. So let's drag this one in. Close this guy out now that we've finished. And then thinking of this twig, we could maybe bring the twig in. So I'm going to bring the twig and the shadow in, and we want to make sure that we deposit it above this frame layer on top, and maybe even on top of the urban threads. I don't know if that's really going to fit. You can try rotating it, so that might work like that. That would be fine. You can add that in there. I'm going to double click it to accept that transformation, but you can also go up the top here and click on that check mark. If you're working in elements, the check mark is on the bounding box. I just had this element covering the top here, so it was easier just to double click. You know, and then maybe we add in a daisy. You can add the daisy down here and add that into the mix. I don't feel like you need to go too crazy with the embellishment because we've got a lot of texture and really great things happening in the background here, so I think you can definitely overdo it. One of the nice things that you could do with the frames here, if you've got some space in the background, is go to your ArtPlay palette and use maybe some of the brushes. So you have the brushes up here, and there might be a fun little brush that you can add behind the frame to add some visual interest. So these edge brushes are kind of fun to do that. So if I drag this in, you can also load these brushes in your panel and use the paintbrush tool to add them, but maybe you play around with maybe adding some brushes around the frames here like this. I'm just using the transform control and using them like overlays. And I don't know if that works, just I don't like how it boxes Ella in there. So I'm going to try a different brush. This one's kind of fun. Let's try this one and see how this one goes. It has that sort of lace component in it again. So there you go, that's much better. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe add that in like that. Again, you can play around with the color. So maybe this time I want to go with a light color. Notice you must have the preserve transparency checked when you're doing this. If you don't have that checked and you click OK, it's going to flood the whole layer with color, which is not ideal. So when you click on that box, then it's going to add, and that works to add a little bit of light. I could also add a blending mode. I'm going to have to make sure I add some of the lighter blending modes here because it's a light color. If I make this darker, by increasing the levels, you can see that on those darker blending modes, then we're going to get more impact. And you can also change the color of it by going to hue and saturation. So you can really adapt any of your digital art supplies to accentuate your photos. All right, so I'm going to go and look at the chat and see. You guys are so sweet. Thank you for being present in the chat, because then it helps me feel like I'm not talking to myself. So love the album, great for travel photos. Liz is here, she's glad she made it. Hopefully you were able to get some video, Regina. And then Kathy says hello. Donna's here. Sometimes she says she have to log into Twitch, and there is an ad now, unfortunately. I think if you get a subscription, then that you can get out of having the ads, so you can kind of buy your way out of the ads. I guess that's how this platform makes money. And then I don't know, JK Peralta says, I've only been here for 5 or 6 minutes, but I feel like I'm listening to a college professor. You're explaining very well, ma'am. Well, thank you so much. I thought you were going to say I was really boring. So that's a compliment. And then Susan says, I've never even noticed that colorize button. Well, you've learned something new. And then Kathy says she's enjoyed the process. So yeah, so I think pretty much at this point I'm done with this. That's kind of how I would do a double page spread, and you do a single page spread similarly. I might want to bring the opacity of this title down just a little bit, just to so it's not sort of in your face. So I can go ahead and save this if I want to. I'm going to add this into, just add this as number 1 and go save. And then close this out, and then we'll maybe look at a different way to use these templates. So of course you're going to use the single page templates in the same way that you are using the double page, and I'm really not doing this very well. I've got to go back to our templates. So I'm going to go and find a template that we want to work with. So these templates, as I said, you have double page spreads going all the way through until you get to the end portion. Then you have the last page of your design, so that's the back page before you hit the cover of your photo book or your album, and then of course you have a photo book cover if you choose to use that, and that is created in double page format. So I'm going to go and find, so maybe we'll work with this one here. This one's a nice template to work with. So if I was working in single page format, then I could just open up the template. Now you'll see that I have line guides here. These are just designed to show you where the bleed area would be if you're working in a photo book. So typically it's going to be about 1/4 of an inch around the edges and about 1/2 an inch in the center. I personally find them distracting, and I have been doing this long enough that I don't have to have the outline. So I'm going to go to view, and I'm going to clear those guides so that I don't have to see them. You can of course use them yourself, and you can also recreate them by clicking into that back area and just pulling them out. So if you're unsure at any time about something that might be lost, then you can just grab one of those line guides and pull it down, and sort of any area outside of these guides is going to be the area that you could potentially lose if you're working in a photo book format. Now if you're printing single prints, you might not lose the edges, especially if you print with persnickety prints, because they hand trim all of their layouts. So you're pretty safe going to the edge if you're doing single prints and putting them in page protectors. And I can see that Shara has subscribed, so she will probably not get those annoying ads at the beginning of these sessions now. I don't think I've mentioned that before, but I try not to get too involved with that piece. It's not something that sort of affects me too much. Okay, so this is the same kind of scenario. We're working in a single page format. So I have two different choices here. So a couple of ways that you can deal with this large mask. Let me go and find my photos again. So again, you can go and you can bring in a large photo of your choice. So we've got Ella here smiling. Here she is with her camera. So I might want to bring in this picture of my back. Let's get a good picture here of Ella. Lots of different pictures. Some of them aren't so in focus. Oh, here's a good one. So here's a picture of Ella at the beach. So let's bring this one in. So I could use this as it's a bit small, but that's okay. I'm just gonna, just for the sake of arguments, I'm gonna increase this and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. Now this one doesn't really cover the edges of my design too well. And I don't really want to increase the size of it anymore. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bring in maybe a background image. So maybe we'll bring in a beachy image. I'm not sure these are going to be any larger, but let's see. Drag this in, and this one I'm going to make larger. Now ideally, when you're using these templates, you're using large size photos. Sometimes my photos aren't big, and I think it's the way I download them, but it's not something. So anyway, I've added that into the background, and then I've got Ella over the top. So I've got two different photos clipped, and then I can kind of blend those two images together. So in this case, I'm going to add a mask with the paintbrush tool selected and a blending brush. I'm just going to kind of blend this into the background. You can also see if you can get some of the blending modes to work too. It might be that you can get an image where the background shows through. So sometimes it works really well with soft light, overlight, hard light, that kind of thing. And you can play around with the placement of this, so maybe bring this across. So that's another way that you can maybe work with two photos. In the same way as using two photos, you could also use digital art supplies. So if I go back to our Alfresco release, because we've got blues and greens, so that would work out quite well, I'm going to go to the papery here and pick one of these different options. So maybe this one will work, and I can drag this over the top here and then drag that into our clipping set. And so now I have the photo over the background. And so we can turn this off. We need to bring this down so it covers. And here we might have to play around with a different blending mode. This one doesn't work as well, I don't think, but we can maybe move this around, there we go, to kind of get a different look. Add that in like that. So yeah, and then maybe we'll close this out and we can add, there's the photo's gone. Picture of her with a surfboard. So maybe add this up here. Go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, go to Image Adjustments, Curves, just increase that a little bit, and that's pretty fun right there. And then we can go ahead and embellish it. So because it's a beach photo, maybe we will dip into the Obeid collection, and I know I have some multimedia shells here, so it might be fun to pull out some of these shells. This one's a neat one, so I'm going to pull this in. Notice I'm not like overthinking the embellishment too much. I just kind of grab something that catches my eye. In this case, I'm thinking, in this case, I'm going to actually drag in all of these elements and just put them on like that and just see how it kind of goes. And then the things that don't work, I can go ahead and kind of change if I want to. So I could turn that off and just, I actually like that the way it is there. Maybe move the urban threads across. I could even rotate the urban threads and have it in a different direction. I could have it so it goes like this and it runs down the side here. I might want to turn this back on, drag this over here like this, or I could just go ahead and turn it off and keep it off. And then maybe we'll go and pick a title from this as well. So let's see what we've got here. Wild and Free, perfect. So I'm going to add this in, drag it and drop it into position, and kind of like that the way it is. And then maybe I'll go in and I'll recolor some of these layers. So there's this layer down here. We've got this fun kind of pink area here. So maybe I'll go to Fill, Color, and then Pink, and have that like that. Maybe make it a little darker by using the levels. And then this area here, I can move this down if I want to. Go to Edit, Fill, Color, and then looks like water to me, so I'm going to go with the blue that's up here. If I click in different areas, I'm going to get different shades of blue. And then she's kind of got this mustache sort of thing going on here. So if I create a layer between the photo layer and the background layer and use my blending brush, I want to make sure I have maybe a white color. That's too white. So you can pick kind of a mid color gray, whatever. Figure out if that pink works quite well. Then I can add that in. And if you don't like the color, you can go to Hue and Saturation and you can change the color. Maybe change the saturation. And so that's going to bring some of the visibility. I like some of the transparency though. So I'm going to just bring the opacity down slightly. I like some of it coming through like that. And you could also have multiple layers where you've got different transparencies. So maybe you just want this area kind of gone around her face. And then the rest of the area at the top here can be fine. So use your layers to your advantage and manipulate them individually. Okay, so that's page 2. I would just go in and change the background. Go ahead and save this one. So Jerusha says, can you talk a bit about the size and resolution of a picture needed to use when you are enlarging it across 2 pages? It needs to be naturally that size. I personally, if you're using a photo that goes across 2 pages, you're going to be using your DSLR probably, or you're going to have your iPhone set to the very highest setting. It really depends on the generation of iPhone, or even just how new your phone is, because obviously the newer your phone, the larger the photos are going to be. I've noticed too, depending on how I download my photos to my computer, that can affect the resolution. So typically I'm not creating too many of these really big style, these scenic style albums. Scenic photography is not something that I have done in the last 10 years, so I create these for you guys. So I'm assuming that for most people that buy these albums, they are either using them like this, where you're using a mix of photos with digital art supplies to make that work. Otherwise, you're going to be using your DSLR and you're going to have these really kind of raw files, which are super huge, and they're going to go across. I think that you can increase the size of your images, but I wouldn't do it by more than 20 to 25%. I say up to 30, but the best way to tell really is to take the photo and go to View 100% and go in and make sure that you like the quality that you have here. This is more of an artsy paper, so I like, an artsy sort of page, so I like to have a little bit of the texture that's going on. But if you don't like the texture, then you can go into the mask and you can kind of paint on the mask and you can get rid of some of that texture. So if I wanted to go in, but this is the best way to view it, is to really go in and look at the image at 100%, and then that way you can kind of fully see how much the image is being stretched. Sometimes you can get away with it when you're using blending modes and you're blending photos with background papers. You can get away with a lot more than if you have, let's go ahead and open that other image that I had. Where was it? Forget where I saved it now. I think it's over here. So here, if I go ahead and I open this up, this is more kind of a neat photo. And if I go to 100%, then you can see it's a little blurry because I had to stretch it. So this isn't an image that I would print. I would have to find a different image to go in there, or find a different way of showcasing it. Hopefully that helps. And then Sonia says, if you rotate the threads, doesn't it mess with the shadow, making it the wrong direction? It can do. In this case, if I go across here, you can see that the shadow is still on the right-hand side. So I guess as long as I have, I guess it was like that. So it was coming down and then I rotated it like that. Now if I wanted it to have it like that, then it maybe wouldn't work so well, if that makes sense. Zoom out so you can see that better. See, like that. So if I had it like that, it doesn't work as well as if I have it like that, according to my light source. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then to your point about the large size photos, I can see there's a line here, so I'd have to go in there and kind of get rid of that. Let's go ahead and save this. It's always good to kind of get a close-up look of your photo so that you can actually see what it looks like. When it's zoomed out like this, it looks a lot different than when you're zoomed in 100%. So you get to actually kind of preview it there. Okay, closing this out. And then I'm going to show you one more example that I thought might be fun. So let's find a template that I want to work with. So maybe like this one. I'm going to drag this one in. This is number 8. And I'm going to remove those guides. And so you can actually use this background as just an area of interest. So you kind of create your own custom artsy paper. So if I go back to, let's go back to Alfresco and pick a papery, so maybe we'll go with this one. We can add that over the mask and go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and then pick a background. So let's bring the blue one in because it matches, like that. Drag that up so it fits. So there's an area at the top here which you can kind of erase. So I'm just going to take the eraser tool and just erase that. So we've kind of created this fun area. Again, you're going to go down here and you're going to change the color of these layers, maybe change the blending mode. You can also change the color on the fly. You can get rid of some of that color. You can change the color, add in maybe some more of the green there. So just go in and change these. We add another blending mode. And there's another bit here too. So I would just take the eraser tool and I deleted the paper like that. So, and you could bring in a smaller mask then. So if you had like a different mask, let's go, a lot of these ArtPlay palette collections come with masks. So photo blends, overlays. You could bring in a mask like this, for example, if you wanted to work on a smaller level. Oops. So I had the wrong layer selected when I introduced that. So I'm going to go ahead and just cancel it. Make sure that you have your the layer selected that's at the top of your clipping mask. If you have the lower layer selected, then it's just going to introduce the mask into the clipping set, and it's going to mess up your layers. So I'm going to drag this in so it sits on top of that clipping set. Why does it keep doing that? All right, I'm going to go one layer up. It shouldn't do that. It keeps wanting to jump into the, there we go, so into the clipping set. So you want basically this to be on top of your clipping set. And now I'm going to drag it back down. Okay, So with that layer selected, I can now go to my photos, and then maybe we'll go with this photo. And so because the mask is smaller, then I can get away with using my smaller photos. And I filled in the template area with a paper instead, if that makes sense. And then I can go ahead and I can duplicate this layer. If I want to intensify that mask, I can duplicate it and maybe merge those two layers together. And now if I go and add that mask and go layer, create clipping mask, then we're going to see a bit more of that photo. And you're going to have to manipulate the mask just a little bit. Maybe pull it down like that. And then you can add your photo in there. And then you can also add in other pieces too. So if you wanted to add in the, if I wanted to add in some of the transfers, we can go back to the transfers, maybe add in this paper texture. Add this over the top. Add a linear burn in there. I'm going to go ahead and just... And this, you can see this is the same transfer that's already in the background paper, so I'm going to delete that. I don't like that. Let's try this. Maybe add this lace in. So the lace is kind of fun because we can now add it over the top of the lace in the paper, but have it on top. Desaturate it, increase, like that. Maybe add a drop shadow layer style. Like that. And then we can add, maybe let's go over here. And so a really great way to use these little frame layers is to use the Artsy Cards. So I like to use those, so we can maybe add an Artsy Cards into the mix. These are the JPEG versions. So maybe this one we'll add in. Can add that over the top of the mask, go to layer, create clipping mask. So I can keep that as is, or I can add in a photo over the top of it if I want to. This one, let's add this one into the mix. So I've added that into the top, which means that when I now start adding different blending modes, I can create some cool effects by blending those two pages together, two layers together. Sometimes it works, sometimes not so much. I kind of liked the one at the top here, darken was kind of fun. So yeah, I'm not finding anything that I love there, so maybe I'll just keep it as normal and have it in like that, or I can have it like this, and then I can add my elements. So this time if I go to the ArtPlay palette Alfresco and go to my elements, we have lots of cool elements here, and we can drag them into our workspace. Always want to pull the PSD files into the background, so that we maintain the integrity of the layers, and then we can add a little bit of embellishment. You know what would be really fun here is to do kind of an extraction. I need to do a class on that where I extract Ella out, and then so she's just stood in the background over the paper layer like this, so she could just be stood here and get rid of the background. You could also play around with using a mask too, where you just sort of get rid of some of this in the background. Like that. Maybe paint her back in, and then have it like that. And then you can play around with maybe darken where some of the paper comes through, so that's kind of fun like that. And then what else do we need here? Change the journaling. We could add in our title. So if I go back to Word Art, Sweet Summer, sounds good to me. So we can add this in here, maybe have this like this, play with different, rotate. I kind of like this area here just because it's empty. Or maybe have it up here. You could play around with the rotation a little bit. I don't know if I like any of those options. So let's see what else we've got here. So something like this might also work too, a bit more understated, where we add Alfresco in here. We can add the title this way, so it kind of follows this line around. We could add it like this, so it follows this line around. Maybe add at the top here, that's another option. I kind of like it down here, I think. And then to fill this area, maybe we go with, I know I had some shells somewhere, so if I go back to my Obeyed release, within the summer bundle, the summer asset bundle, I had some seashells. So I could bring maybe the seashells into, it's pretty, add this one in. Add that in there like that. And then maybe go to Edit Fill. And then go to Color Burn or any of these options. I like Color Burn. Maybe increase the intensity of that. And do it like that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as number 3. And so 3 different ways that you can use the Scenic Template album. I think I'm going to leave it at that so I can go off and enjoy the rest of my Saturday. Does anyone have any questions about that? Got lots of people here, 37 people here. Not many people chatting with me though, so either I explained it really well or you guys are too shy to talk to me. Liz says she has to leave, so I'm sure she's gone by now. But anyway, it's all good. Okay then. Well, if there are no questions, then I am going to go ahead and boogie on out of here. I'm actually working tomorrow. I've got a new ArtPlay palette collection coming. So I want to finish some pieces for that, to actually at least get the ArtPlay palette together so that the team can start giving you some sneak peeks. And then on Wednesday, I have an AA Connect. So if you guys want to come and join me for that, I'm going to be deconstructing a bunch of pages. In fact, tomorrow morning, the first thing I'm going to do when I get up is to populate the page and start adding some of the team pages that I've selected for that. If you have signed up to join me for that, thank you. Please send me some files to work with. I love it when you guys send me some pages to critique. I know Regina sent one. Hoping that everybody else can send me some pages too. It's really nice to have a balance of critiques and deconstructs, and it's really valuable for me. I really love seeing how my team create, and I learn so much from them too. So a couple more questions. Linda says, can you use the eraser brush in Elements? Yes, you can. If I go ahead and just grab my Elements here, I'm just going to open it up. Should open fairly quickly. I will show you how that works. So you have Elements. If I go to, I wonder if I can drag it in. It'd be really helpful if I could just drag it in. Let's go to New Releases. So let's bring this one. I want to see if I could just drag it in, if it lets me do it. It sometimes takes a bit of time. There you go. So yeah, so if I wanted to go in and just erase part of this photo blends here, that's actually really quite cool. So it's funny how you turn layers off. Then you would just select the eraser tool, and then you'd go down to your brush options. I don't have too many options in here at the moment other than the standard brushes that come with Photoshop. So I would just pick one of these round brushes, maybe increase the size a little bit, and then you just use the eraser brush in the same way. So the only problem with the eraser brush is that it's destructible. So if I do this and then I go and I do some other things, add some elements, then I'm going to have a really hard time undoing what I did. And so that's where the benefit of the layer mask and brushes comes in. But I like the eraser tool for really small adjustments. So say I just want to get rid of this area down here, then it's much easier for me to just grab that eraser tool and erase that portion of the design than it is to add the layer mask, ensure that I have the right layer selected, ensure that the colors are correct, and all of the things that go with that. So it's kind of a trade-off between process and how complex the adjustment is. So if I'm doing something that's quite complex and is going to require a bit of brush work, then I'll always use the layer mask and brushes. If I'm just doing a small edit, then I'm going to use the eraser tool. Pat says, thank you, you're so welcome. And then Running MTS says, your explanation is always spot on. Thanks so much. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Kathy says, I can listen all day. I'm so glad. Thank you for coming. It's so nice to have people to come to this thing. Otherwise, if you guys didn't come, I'd literally be talking to myself. And it took me a really long time to do this live stuff and teach because I just felt so stupid talking to myself. So I do much better with the live stuff. And it's just nice to interact with you and talk to you. So Shah says, you did explain it very well. Thanks. I'm glad I saw it in time to see most of it. Well, hopefully this is recorded. We haven't had any issues yet, touch wood. So I think Eric resolved the issues I had with my computer previously, so I'm hoping to get the replay up. Not sure I will be getting it up this afternoon. We'll see how it goes. The boys are at a tournament and they're not home yet, so I might have time to get it up today, but if not, I'll get it up tomorrow. I kind of want to have a little bit of a rest this afternoon before I kind of launch into next week, because I have a pretty stacked week as far as work is concerned, and tomorrow is going to be a work day for me. Okay, well, I'm really glad that you guys are enjoying these sessions. I'll keep them coming and provide inspiration. Thank you for supporting what I do around here and buying the products. Really, you know, I wouldn't be here without you guys. So really appreciate that. And without further ado, I am going to go ahead and switch this off and wish you guys a really great weekend.